Please.
Don't put the camera on me to start, Rian. Where are you going? Okay, hold on, guys.
You are live, Lauren. You are live.
Hi there. Very good morning to everybody. We are here down at the Devil's Grotto for our early morning, 7 a.m. in fact, dive. So it's Lauren here. We have Rian on camera. And we have Patrick on the surface. So I am currently at 12 meters resting on the sand, right in the heart of the Devil's Grotto. And there are lots of big tar ponds behind me. The temperature today is 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Is that right, Pat?
Yes, you are correct.
I'm getting there. So today we are just going to go and see what we can find. I am still looking for that moray eel and I'm not going to give up. So please send in your questions using that hashtag diveLIVE and we will do our very best to answer them. You can also let us know what you want to see today. So over to you, Pat.
Yes, welcome everybody. We hope you're all doing well today, wherever you're watching in from on the world. So we are looking at some tarpon right now. So Lauren, can you give us a bit of a size estimate of these tarpons?
So the ones you're looking at, I would estimate would just be close to the meter, so almost 3 feet. There's two that are definitely bigger than the other one, and sadly, we did see this individual yesterday, but one of them does have fishing line hanging from it, so it must be sort of a resident around here. I wish there was a way we could get that fishing line off, but I do believe the hook will rust out naturally. But it's a bit sad. I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but it's the one at the very back.
Yeah, no, we can definitely see that. It's trailing there behind it. That's unfortunate, but the animal does look in good condition and it's not wrapped around anything, so it looks like the animal will be okay.
Yeah, it does look like it's swimming and moving okay. It doesn't look like it's hindered by this line, but it definitely is a sad sight and we are starting to see it regularly. So we do show you tarpons quite a lot, but I was actually in Mexico before and we travelled on the road for 5 hours to do a dive with tarpons. They were that special over there. But here, they just seem to be so common, so we never want to take them for granted, so we're always giving you some nice shots of these beautiful fish.
Yes, we are very, very lucky to have such a resident crew here of tarpon. They're pretty much always there. We can guarantee if we go to the grotto during the day that there's going to be this school of tarpon hanging out, just chilling for the day.
Yeah, you can see they're barely moving. I'm very close to them right now. They're literally barely moving their bodies or their fins, so they are just in a very relaxed state right now, conserving their energy for the night time. They've probably just finished a night of some serious hunting, so it's now time to rest.
And just quickly for anybody watching along asking questions, we can't actually get the questions up on Facebook at the moment, so please use either Twitter with the hashtag diveLIVE or on the YouTube chat stream. So sorry to anyone on Facebook right now, but we can't see your questions.
Okay, so I am a big fan of Devil's Grotto. There's just always something happening around here. So we're just going to swim around the grotto as much as we can and see what is happening.
I would like a stingray if you can spot one today, Lauren.
I was just going to ask you what you would like to see, Pat. I would like a stingray too. We're actually hoping to bump into some spotted eagle rays. Now, they are very difficult to get on camera for photographers and videographers. They're not easy animals, but I will do my very best to look out for them. The visibility is not so great today. Now visibility just means how far we can see in front of us. So it's not as bad as it has been, but it's not great. So when the visibility is reduced for us, it's a little bit more difficult to find the animals, but I will do my best.
And also, when it is like this, there's a lot of food and plankton in the water, so we're bound to see more marine life anyway.
Yeah.
It's a good little trade-off.
Exactly. So we did have some good dives yesterday, so we're hoping for some even better dives today.
Yes. Lauren has been Lady Luck lately.
That is true. We do have a beautiful pair of butterfly fish here. Can you see them?
Yes, so these are the spot fin butterfly fish, and they're identifiable by that black spot, that small black spot towards the rear of its dorsal fin or its top fin.
Yeah, and this is most likely a mating pair. I love it how butterfly fish travel around in pairs.
Yeah, it's a beautiful relationship that they have, always feeding and working together as a team, and obviously mating together too. And we can see that they've got really long pointed snouts, which they utilise to eat the polyps, which are the tiny animals that are extended out of the coral. So they use this long snout to suck out the polyps from the coral, which is a very specialised mode of feeding. It's not often seen much down here in the reefs in Grand Cayman.
Yeah, butterfly fish are known as corallivores, so they do feed specifically on coral. But it's not just the polyps. Some of them also are highly specialised, and they feed on the skeletons or even the mucus. So butterfly fish are very fussy with their food. Now we have just a huge array of fish in front of us right now. There's quail wrasse here, there's goatfish. Let's take a look at these juvenile goatfish right over here. There's 4 of them just hanging in the current.
Yes.
They're able to stay really still because the current is actually really strong down here, which makes it a little bit tricky for us to swim. But yeah, are you able to see those yellow goldfish?
Yes, so just towards the left of where we were looking, they have swam out of
the
scene.
We'll go to the bigger
yes, so just in the middle right now, so those very white fish with the yellow tails, so they are goatfish. And they're called goatfish because they have a little beard just like a goat. So this isn't actually a beard. We can see it on the top one there. It's 2 barbels that hang down under the chin. And this is a sensory organ that they can use to sift through the sand and pull out crustaceans and mollusks. So quite often other fish realise this and will hang around with the goatfish and use them like a metal detector for their food.
Yeah, that's right. So they do make a big mess when they're swimming over the sand. You can normally see the sand being stirred up in front of them for quite some time. But these appear to be young goatfish. They do get a lot bigger than this. And you can very often mistake them for a stingray. They mess up so much sand when you're swimming over the sand. You might think, oh, there's a stingray. And then you realise it is a goatfish.
The stingray's ears must have been burning.
There's not a stingray.
Oh, I thought you were actually saying, oh, there's a stingray. Sorry, Lauren.
I will keep my eyes out. We are in the prime stingray location, so fingers crossed. I think Rian's doing a really good job of staying with these goatfish.
Yeah, they're usually pretty skittish animals, these goatfish, and they tend to swim off when approached, but yeah, Rian he is a fish anyway, so they just see him as another big fish in the water there. Don't forget, if you have any questions about what's going on your screen, then just ask us. Send in your questions using the hashtag diveLIVE. They're swimming quite fast, but this is a zero, and it's in the macro family, so it's swimming very fast away from us right now. Are you able to see it? Yes, so that is a Cero, spelled C-E-R-O.
I'm quite curious. They do just came very close to me right now, but then I think they realise that maybe we are not exactly what they're looking for, and they swim off. But yeah, so that was about this size. That was about 60 centimeters and quite a big round fish. So maybe this will be a fishy dive today.
Yes, well, we actually do have here on Twitter, using the hashtag diveLIVE, Yvonne wants to see an angelfish. So,
oh, any specific species of angelfish?
No, she just says angelfish in general.
Okay, well that one I think I can definitely do. We are swimming very close to the... Oh, here we go. Queen angelfish up here.
Ah, beautiful.
See, you like that? You request it and you get it.
It's not often that happens down here in the marine world.
So this, you're about to see a queen angelfish, and this one looks full size. It's a fully grown adult, and these fish are named the queen because, one, they are incredibly beautiful and glorious to look at, but they do have a little blue marking on their forehead, if you like, which kind of looks like a crown. So that's where the name the queen angelfish comes from.
And that,
this one is probably, I would say, 50 centimeters from head to tail.
That's quite a large size one. So it's obviously very reproductively active and mature.
Yeah, it's definitely an adult. And it's just swimming away from us, but you are able to see that, aren't you?
Yes, very, very well. And it looks like we have a mate there in the background as well. Quite a way away, it looks like there's another queen angelfish.
Yeah, there is. Well spotted.
So, you go, Lauren.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say angelfish are really, really common here. There is a different recognised species in the Caribbean, and this queen angelfish that you can see in front of you right now is actually able to mate with the blue angelfish and produce a hybrid species. Oh, we have a porcupine puffer.
Ooh, beautiful.
Lovely. Just over here, Rian, we have a porcupine puffer fish. It's also swimming quite
Oh, yes. So just swimming towards the left of screen now. It sticks out like a broken thumb because it looks very different from all the other fish there.
Yes, it's a very bulbous and awkward swimmer. It's not graceful in its swimming technique, but it is an interesting fish. For those of you who do follow the live dive, you know that we love a puffer fish.
And as Lauren mentioned, it is quite an odd swimmer. It does have a strange technique, but this actually is really efficient for it because if you watch the movements of the dorsal and the anal fin, they are in sync with the movement of the tail. So when the top and bottom fin move to one side, the tail moves to that side too. So they're getting more surface area and can project more speed.
And they're not technically puffer fish, but the reason they get loosely termed a puffer fish is because these animals can puff up, and they can puff up really large, like a big balloon, a big basketball, if you like. And they just do this by sucking in lots of water into their really stretchy stomachs, and that allows them to puff up from head to tail. So because they can actually rapidly pump water in, they also kind of use this technique when they're playing around a bit with their prey. So when they're trying to catch some food, they can actually spurt out jets of water really, really fast in order to stun their prey, and they've been seen to play with them before eating them.
Wow.
Incredibly naughty little fish.
That is fascinating, Lauren. I actually didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah.
So they just have this ability to suck in water so fast for puffing up that they can also utilize it in other ways. So we've got a sight of the pufferfish again, so we'll try and get it back for you. But because this is a porcupine, they do have spines on their skin. So when they do puff up, these spines naturally stand erect on end. So not only are they like a big basketball, they're like a big spiky basketball. So as you can imagine, no predator will want to eat these pufferfish.
No, not at all. And they do have a toxin that is called a tetrodotoxin. And this is actually produced by bacteria, symbiotic bacteria in their organs. So they don't actually produce it themselves. It's made by the bacteria, and in the return, the bacteria get a home, and food. So it's a strange relationship, but it's one that works for this animal.
And right ahead of us now, we have a scribbled or a scrawled firefish.
Oh,
this
beautiful.
is one of my favourite fish in the entire ocean. So I'm definitely going to point it out here. Oh, it's actually eating.
Ooh, yes, so we can see that right in the middle right now. So that is, beautiful, with that big long tail and the blue stripes running along its body.
Yeah, so this is sorry, I'm so used to saying scribbled, it's like engraved in me. This is a filefish, but in the Caribbean region, it's a scrawled filefish. But to be honest, scribbled and scrawled both have the same meaning. And the Latin name is Aluterus scriptus, so the name kind of comes from that, from the markings on their body. It looks like someone has just taken a really bright blue crayon and just scribbled all over them. Now this one is the largest in the filefish family, so this particular individual is not full size. 100 centimeters, 1 meter, about 3 foot will be full size. So this individual is definitely an adult, but it's definitely not as big as it can get. Now you normally see them hanging around in pairs, but this one is obviously alone, and they love to snack on big jellyfish. Very often you see big jellyfish in the water, especially the crown jelly. You will always see some scribbled filefish having their lunch. But this one seems to be feeding on something else.
Yeah, it's was that a gorgonian that just took a bite out of it?
I think it is a gorgonian with all its tentacles tucked in. Oh, it's still eating.
That's eating. Is that fire coral? That's probably not a good idea.
I'm just going to get a little bit closer. I tend to stay out the way so I don't disturb.
And you can see when it goes to take...
Actually, I think it's fire coral. Wow.
That's a brave filefish. So fire coral is a type of coral that has very, very toxic, well, not very, but extremely toxic, it's called a nematocyst, which is a stinging cell. And so for humans, when they brush against it, they will get a really, really nasty blister.
Very nasty, trust me.
Yeah, Lauren knows. So yeah, it's very odd to see the fish eating it. Yeah,
let's follow it for a little while and see what else it does. I'm not sure if you can get a good view of it, but it does have a real protruding mouth. Like, looks like it's had some lip fillers. But this is actually just really sharp incisors on both the top and the bottom jaws of the mouth, because they are known to sort of crush their prey. So it's really interesting just to see it feeding on fire coral. I have to say, I've never seen that before. Now they are closely related to the triggerfish, another great family of fish, which are famous for having that trigger on the top of their head. And actually, filefish, including this one you can see right now, does also have a sort of trigger. So instead of having 3 spines, they will have 2 spines. One which can go erect on the top of their head, and another small spine which locks it in place. So you can't see that right now because it's flat against the top of the head, but they do have a spine similar to the triggerfish.
And everybody's loving the views of this beautiful fish, and nice camera work from Rian. And now everybody, we do have zoom. They finally have zoom capabilities as well. So
it's not working today, but in the next few days the zoom will be with us. So that's going to be interesting for us to get even closer to these animals for everybody watching. So Rian's just looks like another scribbled filefish here following it along. But filefish do get their names because maybe the Zoom will be able to pick this up actually. Their body is covered in really small scales that we can't really see from here, but each little scale has a very small spine. So, if you were to dry this fish out in the sun, you would be able to use the skin as a sort of sandpaper. It would have a really rough texture, and a lot of people back in the day, especially fishermen, would use the skin to polish off their boats. So that's where the name filefish comes from.
That's very interesting. And we can see that it's got a very flattened body and that it kind of turns on the side sometimes to feed, and this is a real advantage for this fish because, as you can see, this reef is quite topographically very complex. So there's a lot of cracks and a lot of crevices. So by turning on the side with this flat body, it's able to weave itself into these harder to get places.
Yeah, and it's just amazing for me to be following this fish because it really is one of my favourites. I think this fish is incredibly beautiful. And it's normally quite shy, so it's quite unusual that we're getting to follow this fish on its journey across the reef. Oh, it's munching on something else now.
Yes, that looks like a sponge, is that? No, a coral.
I'm a little bit further behind. Let me get closer.
Oh no, it was a sponge. It was eating a sponge.
Well, it must just be taking big chunks out of everything.
A curious little eater.
It is looking at us. It's kind of saying, why are you guys following me?
Stop watching me eat, guys. I'm self-conscious.
That's really interesting. Now, I assumed that they sort of ate a little bit more harder prey. Because of these teeth, these sharp incisors, I assumed that they would be more crushing rather than sort of grazing across the corals. So we will say goodbye to that, my favourite scrawled filefish. And we are going to come slightly shallower up over the reef.
While we're doing that, we have a question here from Take Care. So we were talking about the bacteria that creates the toxins for the pufferfish, and Take Care wanted to know, since that it lives, grows and reproduces, is bacteria classed as an animal? And no, it is not, because I mean, so plants, they also grow and reproduce, but they aren't classified as animals. And now bacteria have different cell structures to animals as well. So they are classed in they are classed as prokaryotes, whereas us as humans and other animals are eukaryotes, and that's all due to the structure of the cells.
Pat, I am so glad you're here because it's 7 a.m. and I'm underwater and I'm not sure I could have answered that question.
I've got your back, Lauren.
But regarding that toxin, it is called a tetrodotoxin, and porcupine fish are actually a delicacy in some parts of Asia, especially Japan. So people actually eat the flesh of the pufferfish, which contains this toxin, which can be as potent, or about 1,200 times as potent as cyanide. So these chefs that prepare the meat of the pufferfish are actually trained. They have to go through a lot of training and be certified before they're able to actually serve this fish on a plate. And unfortunately, it may not be done correctly every time. And I did read that there are, I think, under 10 deaths per year in Japan from people eating these fish. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is unreal. It's, yeah, the risk people take for good food, I guess.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be me that's ordering that fish for sure.
So we have a question here, actually quite an interesting question from Proud Cat Mama, and she's asking whether all fish are cold-blooded, and yes they are. So they are ectotherms, that's what we call them, ectotherms, which means that they get heat from their outside, from their ecto environment. So with fish, they have to rely on their external environment to maintain their internal body temperature. Now with some larger animals like sharks, they do have a bit more fat, and so they're still ectothermic, they're still cold-blooded, but they can control their body temperature a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think someone asked that the other day as well. So, yeah, fish are all cold-blooded. And as much as I like to think of myself as a fish, I do get really cold down here. I'm definitely not adapted to the marine environment as much as I would like to be.
Maybe you just need a little bit more fat layer on your...
Not sure about that. So we are just swimming over the coral. I'll just give you a depth update. We're still at 10 meters, and there's lots of sort of very small sandy channels. And I am doing my very best to look for these moray eels. I do feel I'm on a lucky streak, and that is exactly what I want to show you. So that is what we're looking for.
Yeah, so morays are notorious for hanging out under ledges and in cracks, so they can swim backwards and forwards, which really gives them an advantage. They can hang out in this crack and just move back and forward as needed to ambush prey or escape a predator.
Yep, and they are nocturnal, so during the day they do tend to hide a little bit, which is why it's a little bit trickier for us to find. But we do have a French angelfish swimming directly in front of us, so we may as well take a look at that while we're here.
Yes, we can see that now right in the middle. So this is different to the queen angelfish. This is a French angelfish, and we can tell it's a French angelfish because of the yellow tips on its scale and its white lipstick.
Fish love their lipstick, but actually the irony of that is a lot of lipsticks that females do wear from various different cosmetic companies do actually contain fish scales. I think it's like 95% of all lipsticks do contain fish scales, so that was quite an ironic comment.
Yes, very, very ironic. So we have a couple of shark-related questions here.
Oh, sure. I love sharks.
So Shell wants to know, well, firstly we'll go with Paula, who was asking whether we've seen a shark, and we have live. We have nurse sharks here, which aren't dangerous. They're a very, very chilled animal, and we don't get to see them often, but we do see them sometimes. And Shell wants to know whether we worry about shark encounters. Do they pose a danger to us, Lauren?
Absolutely not. I did actually get into marine biology with a really strange obsession over sharks when I was younger. I was just crazy about them. Instead of Barbie, I was into sharks. And the more I've learned about them over the years, I've swam with so many different sharks, from tiger sharks to bull sharks to nurse sharks to reef sharks. They are just animals. They're the apex predator in the ocean. So they probably are really fearsome to the fish, but we should definitely not fear them. In fact, the biggest predator of sharks of all time is us. And they did estimate 2 years ago that the number of recorded killings of sharks was reaching 73 million in 1 year. And that was just the recorded amount. So imagine all the other killings that were not recorded. So they do estimate it's about 100 million per year sharks that we are killing. And we're killing them predominantly for this delicacy in Asia called shark fin soup. So they're just killed for their fins, which is such a small percentage of the shark's body. So it's a very sad situation, and very often the shark's fins are removed and the body is thrown overboard. So they do say that we've lost about 90% of our sharks population, which unfortunately would be devastating for the oceans because they have such a crucial role to play. So we shouldn't fear these guys. They're just sharks going about their daily business, and they're not after humans. We are not their food source. So we need to change our mindset and not be scared of them for sure. But Pat, you're Australian, so maybe you have a different opinion on that.
Yeah, nah, they're great creatures. But back to this French angelfish that we have been following around. We have a question here from Marcy, and she wants to know how many different angelfish we have here on the reef. And on this reef in particular, we have 4 species that we see a lot, which is the French angelfish, the grey angelfish, the queen angelfish, and the rock beauty. So there's 4, but I believe there's about 8 in the Caribbean in general.
Yeah, there's 8 in this region. I haven't seen the grey angelfish on this reef, actually. It's on my list to see. But yeah, those others that Pat mentioned are really common for us to sight here. But there is 8 in total. And it's just letting us follow it along the reef. And you can see it's mainly using its pectoral fins, those fins at the side, just to swim along. It's barely moving the rest of its body.
Yeah, it really doesn't need to move at a quick pace right now. We are no threat to it, and it's just scanning about looking for food. We did see it earlier feeding on a gorgonian there. Just that's a damselfish just comes out and tells it to go away. Maybe it does need to move a little quicker when the damselfish are around.
Yeah, and you know how we're talking about sharks? I'm a lot more scared of the damselfish, I'll tell you.
Yes, they are quite a lot more aggressive than any shark, I think.
So just to give you an air update, I'm on 90 bar, so we still have a little time, and I am looking furiously here for this moray eel.
Yeah, I mean, oh no, you are pretty far out. I was going to say it might even be worth going to check the engine block. There is a moray eel that we quite frequently see at an engine block, but it is a bit closer into shore, a long way away from where Lauren is.
Yeah. We are going to look under the ledges here though, before wrapping up the dive, and all around us is just so many fish that we can definitely talk about them on the way.
Definitely, and if you have any questions about these fish or anything that's relevant to what is happening right now, please send in your questions, and don't forget, if you're on Twitter, to use the hashtag diveLIVE. If you're on YouTube, we can see them anyway, so there's no need to hashtag diveLIVE. I know there's a bit of confusion there, so Twitter, use the hashtag, YouTube, we'll just see it anyway. So that looks like a big colony of barrels or vase sponges there.
I think this is a tube sponge.
Tube sponge, sorry.
Yeah, there's a big colony of tube sponges, which is a favourite food of the angelfish we were just looking at. So sometimes when you look at a sponge, you can see sort of V-shaped bite marks, and you know that that's been an angelfish munching on them. Now I did just see a big chunk of fish, but it's just disappeared. Hold on, let me try and re-sight it. We'll go down this way we are.
So, we have a question for Sarinth asking if we're really live, and yes, we are really live. So just as you've typed this question, I am answering it in real time.
Who was that from?
Sarinth.
Oh, hi there. Yes, we are really live right now. It is happening, and that's how we never know. Oh, here it is here. We have the trunk fish, or is it the cowfish? Let me get a little bit closer. Okay, I don't think Rianne is able to get closer. That's a shame, it was a honeycomb there. But yes, we are live, and that's how we never know what we're going to see. It's just as spontaneous for you as it is for us. And some dives we'll see a lot of things, and some dives we won't. So yes.
But we still try and make it as interesting as possible for you all.
Yeah. That was a good question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's good.
You got any more easy ones like that?
We actually do have another one asking about Nemo. Do we get Nemo here? And by Nemo, they are talking about clownfish. And no, we don't get them here in the Caribbean.
Yeah, there's 26 different species of Nemo, if you like, which is so incorrect. We will say clownfish, but none of them are in the Caribbean, which is a shame, because in the Indian Ocean, anywhere you swim, you will see lots and lots of clownfish. And they are called clownfish because of the funny looking markings. And of course, the popularity of clownfish went through the roof from that movie Finding Nemo, which was great to raise awareness about the ocean, but unfortunately it did affect the populations of clownfish, because a lot of people then wanted a clownfish for their aquarium at home, so the populations actually declined. And clownfish do have a really important symbiotic relationship with anemones, so I'm just having a look around and see if we can see an anemone for you.
Yes, so we do get quite a few giant anemones here on this reef, and they are actually very, very beautiful, so it'd be good to see one.
Yeah, I will point one out if we see one, so it's very unusual for me, who spent 7 years in the Indian Ocean, to see anemones here without a clownfish defending them. They are great little characters to have on the reef.
They're quite aggressive. They're like a damselfish in that sense.
Yeah, check out this barrel sponge up ahead. That is massive. And it's right next to bright yellow tube sponges.
Oh, yes, so that's... The sponges here actually create quite a beautiful setting, I think. They're really colourful, and they have such unique structures and shapes. And now this barrel sponge, how big would you estimate this barrel sponge to be? From...
I could definitely fit inside. I'm just swimming around. Oh, so from top to bottom, I would say it's between 4 to 5 feet.
Wow, that's big. So that's about 1.5 metres. That is massive. Now, I did see a barrel sponge, not here on the reef, but when I was watching something, and it was about the same size as this one here, and they estimated that one to be 9,000 years old. So what we are looking at right now could potentially be thousands of years old, which is absolutely incredible.
And over here we have a female pugfish. Beautiful coloration, just feeding on the sand here. She's changed its colour right in front of me. Let's see if we can get it for you. It's eating on the sand. It might be a male actually, but it's definitely not a terminal male. So it's probably a immature male. Can you see that?
Yes. So that is a good view. We just saw it ripping through some algae there. So they have big shovel-like mouths, and they can use this to sift through the sand or pick... Oh! Yeah, and it just did a really dramatic colour change. Wow! That is insane.
This is about 50 to 60 centimetres, this one.
So they do tend... So that colour change we just saw, they will do that permanently when they turn into a terminal male, which is a big sexually mature dominant male. So how it did it, or why it did it temporarily just then, is a mystery, but it was awesome.
We always do find the hogfish on the sandy bottom. They are sifting through the sand to find little crustaceans.
Yes, and they will quite often do this by letting the sand come through their gills, and quite often you will also see a barjack, which is a type of trevally, another fish that will hang around the hogfish and literally sit right at its gills and try and get anything that the hogfish might have missed when it was sifting through the sand.
So I have got about 20 bar left before I reach 50 bar, which is where we go and do our safety stop. So let's just go a little bit shallower, have a look around this area and see what else we can find. So if you do have any questions that's relevant to today's dive, then please do send them in before we have to wrap up.
And we have a question here from Jinlin. She wanted to know how many gills do fish have, and how do the gills work? So fish generally will have a pair of gills, so they'll have one on each side, and they use this to... it's a bit of a tricky explanation, but essentially the water that comes in and passes over their gills has dissolved oxygen in it. And so there will be a higher concentration of dissolved oxygen coming through the gills than what is going through the blood. So because of diffusion, which is when something goes from a low concentration to a high concentration, vice versa, a high concentration to a low concentration, the oxygen will diffuse across the gills and back into the blood.
You did that well, Pat.
Hopefully, yeah, that was easy to follow along, but that's in a nutshell is how fish gills work. As we have is this a schoolmaster? Yes, a schoolmaster snapper. You can see it's got that lateral line running along the body, so that is a sensory organ. It's essentially just tiny little holes with little hairs in it that sense changes in the water. So it's kind
of while we're on the anatomy of fish, talking about the lateral line and the gills, all fish have a swim bladder as well inside, which is an organ, which we of course don't have, and it's normally filled with gas, predominantly oxygen, which they use for buoyancy control. So they've also got to control their bodies in the medium of water as well. So I'm wearing this buoyancy control device jacket, the BCD. That's how I can control my buoyancy. But of course, fish don't wear BCDs. That would be really weird if they did. So they have a swim bladder inside. So they have all these adaptations which make them perfect for living in the water environment. Lateral line, gills, and swim bladder.
Yes, wouldn't it be great if we had all those things?
So we're just going to have one last look for this elusive Maury, and then we will get ready to wrap up the dive.
Yes. And while we're looking for that, there was a lot of interest and a lot of love for that colour change in the hogfish, and it's generated a few questions. So Take Care wanted to know how they actually do this colour change, and it's not chemical, it's controlled by pigments in a cell called a chromatophore. So the orientation of these pigments shines light differently, so by changing the orientation of these pigments, they're changing their colour. And Monique wanted to know why they changed colour, and well, I don't actually know in that situation with this hogfish. I will have to go and research that because it's something I've never seen or heard of before. I can assume it was maybe a warning sign to stay away, or maybe they thought that we were...
What are you referring to when what changes colour?
The hogfish, when it changed colour really dramatically. I'm just speculating as to why it did it, because I'm not actually sure.
It's probably most likely just a form of communication. So like Pat said, it could just be a warning or a signal, you know, hey, I'm eating. It will just be some form of communication. We just don't understand exactly what that message is. And Rian has a beautiful school in front of him.
Yeah, so another school. So the schoolmasters that we saw before, or the single schoolmaster, this is that same species, but they are actually in a school. And geez, they're the master of it.
I'm the schoolmaster. I'm the master of the school. Oh, beautiful.
And you can see where they...
shallow now, so they're just hanging around in the shallows.
Yes, it's good to see them in the shallows as well, because that light is really penetrating and showing their awesome, brilliant yellows there.
So on that note with the schoolmaster, we will have to wrap up the dive, I'm afraid. So I am finished, got 50 bar, and do my safety stop and go back to the surface to join Pat. But he will be under the water again at 11 a.m. Canadian time, so please do join us. And thank you for joining me today. It was a fishy fun dive, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody. I'll be seeing you under the water at 11 a.m. Cayman time.